86-79 was the final score on Tuesday in the JMA Wireless Dome. And Adam, this whole game, it just makes me angry. This whole thing made me angry. Okay. I do think Syracuse shot out of its mind, right? I mean, first time since 2015 that a team has shot better than 60% from against Carolina. The Orange in total 30 of 48, 62.5%, 8 of 17 from three-point range, nearly 50%, 18 of 25 at the free throw line. Carolina did not shoot the ball poorly. Tar Heels shot 47.5%. They had 12 three-pointers. They only took 11 free throws, though. Carolina came into this game number 9 in the country in free throws made a game at better than 18. They were 9 of 11 in this game. And while the free throw disparity isn't why Carolina lost, I do think it shows you Carolina was taking a lot of jump shots, which they were making at a fair rate, but taking a lot of jump shots. They weren't getting to the line. A lot of things that the Tar Heels have done consistently this year to win, get to the line, stop the other team from making baskets at a 60% clip, and rebounding. And Tar Heels had a 31-23 rebound advantage, including 13 offensive rebounds, but only had 18 second chance points. So you're looking at a little more than a point per offensive rebound. I think you got to have a better conversion ratio than that. And Carolina failed to get a couple of big rebounds when it mattered late in the game. And Adam, I haven't looked at this yet. I am going to before the game on Saturday. Like, off the top of your head, can you remember the last time a Syracuse possession in the game didn't result in points, whether it was free throws or a field goal? Like, it feels like the last 10 minutes of the game, Syracuse got something on every single possession.
And by the end of the game, it was all just going to the free throw line.
Sure.
I mean, and not even just the end part where Carolina was purposely sending them to the free throw line, but even prior to that. So their hot shooting got them to the point where they could get to the line, where then they got at least one, sometimes two, and the Tar Heels weren't doing the same thing, and they were turning it over.
Yeah, and that was the other point I was going to bring up, is the Carolina only had 11 turnovers, but they had some late-game turnovers that hurt them. Ingram had it knocked out of his hands when Carolina was down 5 with a couple minutes to go, knocked out of his hands, and after one of a billion lengthy reviews, they determined that it went out off of him. Cormac Ryan had it taken out of his hands when Carolina was still only down like 4 or 5 with about 45 seconds left. Had they scored there, I think it's a different feeling. Syracuse maybe still wins, but it's a different, the last couple seconds play out differently. And Carolina threw it to the high post one time to Baycott. The pass wasn't great. He had to leap up, tipped it, and both teams went for it. It went out off of him after yet again another lengthy review off of Baycott. So turnovers down the stretch. Third straight game that's happened. Syracuse hot shooting. Carolina's just failure to get a couple of key rebounds. Syracuse won this game with their offensive performance. But I thought Carolina did enough to not win as well. And Adam, I do think the Tar Heels need this break. They look like they're tired to me. And I don't mean they're not trying hard. I mean, it just seems like you're in this kind of grind portion of the season where the end of the regular season's close, but it's not right there just yet. Carolina, and I know all these sound like excuses, but Carolina's been traveling a ton, which I do think wears you down eventually. And just all of these factors go into the fact that Carolina could use this break that is upcoming, which I think will be good for it. But also, it's got to clean up some of these things that we're talking about.
4 turnovers in the final 2:02.
Yeah,
it's hard
in a close game.
Yeah, it's hard to come from behind if you're not getting shots, because you have to get the shots to score the points, but you can't get shots if you turn it over. It felt like every meaningful loose ball the Tar Heels didn't get, and some of those turned into turnovers, like the rebound that it looked like Cormac Ryan, the defensive rebound it looked like Cormac Ryan might have on the baseline, but he couldn't secure it, and then that became a turnover. Just too many instances of that. I don't necessarily think let's see if Syracuse can make a ton of jumpers is a terrible strategy.
No.
They hadn't been a good shooting team.
Well, look, this is how Carolina has played defense. Now, were there some defensive breakdowns? Yes. But also, what Carolina has tried to get the opposition to do is take guarded mid-range shots, right? Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And I think for the most part, that's what happened in this game. Syracuse made a ton of them. They hit some threes. Of course, there was the J.J. Starling bank in from half court after he had double dribbled. That hurt. And then there were some defensive breakdowns in there as well. Syracuse did get some layups that you can't let them have. I think it would be inaccurate, and I don't know if people are saying this, that Carolina, if you said, well, why didn't the Tar Heels try to do anything differently defensive? They did. I mean, multiple times Carolina was trying to double to get the ball out of Judah Mintz's hands because he was 8 of 11 from the field, 8 of 10 from two-point range, and 9 of 11 at the free throw line. So, I mean, and Carolina tried to guard things different ways. And Syracuse was just very, very good offensively on that day. When Starling banked in that didn't end the game, but it summed up the day for Carolina defensively.
He did double dribble right in front of Ron Groover.
Yes.
That's a game-changing play. But I think this is when it's fortunate that we get to be in the building to see these things, because I think if you weren't in the building in both of these matchups, you don't have a full appreciation for how much, Syracuse gave up in the first game between these two teams. They just gave up.
Yeah.
And then they did the opposite of give up in this game, where they got a little fuel, and then it was like, oh, we're a completely different team. We're the greatest team in the world. This is so fun. We're just making all these jumpers, and this is great. Just give it to Judah Mintz, and he'll take it on Elliot Cadeau because he's bigger than him. This is great. That type of turnaround is why it always amazes me that people are willing to put money on things like this, because you have no idea what they're going to do. On it, not just Syracuse, any college team in the world, you would never believe those were the same. But they got a little behind at the Smith Center and decided they were done. And they got a little ahead at the JMA Wireless Dome and decided, yeah, we're into this. Let's do it. And somewhere in the middle is the truth about both these teams.
Right.
Maybe we'll see that at the ACC tournament, perhaps.
I did think Syracuse's guards' size played a role in this game. I thought for the first time all year for an extended period of time, Carolina's lack of size in the backcourt hurt it. You mentioned Mintz and Cadeau. I thought, Starling's listed at 6'4", and there were a couple of times that, R.J. Davis was playing defense and wasn't in bad position or would challenge the shot, but he just wasn't big enough. So I did think Syracuse took advantage of that advantage that they had. And, Adam, Carolina's another aspect of this game was Syracuse slowed the game way down. Now, it helps. You can do that a lot easier when you're shooting 62.5% for the game because you don't need as many possessions because you're scoring on every possession. It puts so much pressure on Carolina's offense to try and score, which, again, the Tar Heels did at a decent rate in this game. But it put so much pressure on Carolina because Syracuse just wasn't missing and was holding the ball for so long, which is what Clemson did. And so it seems to me that teams are starting to think, minimize possessions against these guys and try to go one-on-one against their guards and see what happens. So I think Carolina's got to get ready or has to be prepared to see some more of that moving forward.
You mentioned this off the air the other night, but it is a little concerning that this was the second meeting with both these teams, and they came in with a much better plan of how to attack the Tar Heels and successfully did so, because you're going to encounter that more over the rest of the season. So the whole thing about the looking tired, and I know people are going to say, oh, they're college kids. And people want Hubert Davis to play the bench again now, whereas a month ago they said he was playing the bench too much. Now he's not playing it enough. Who do you want to see more of? Like, who, when you've seen them out there, have you thought that guy should be out there more, especially at the expense of fill-in name of other guy who should be out there less? Like, you've got to play someone else less. Jalen Withers was somewhat better against Syracuse in limited time. Jalen Washington has been pretty good here lately. I could get on the train of let's see him.
I thought Jalen Washington was good on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He probably was the Tar Heel that in total played the best.
Yeah, I think
in his minutes.
And that's the second time here recently for him where he's been one of the bright spots. So maybe you give him a few more minutes, but that doesn't really address some of these other issues we've talked about because he doesn't play any of those positions. Paxton Wojcik didn't play at all after having played 20-plus minutes a couple times in the absence of Seth Trimble. You get Seth Trimble back, but I think everyone understands he was not the same guy he was before he got hurt because he's getting back to that point. I think you need some of those guys we just named to play better in order to be able to play them more.
So, what a wild night, because then Virginia loses at home for the first time in more than a year. They lost to Pitt, who's playing extraordinarily well. So, Carolina's still in first place, a full game ahead of Virginia and half a game ahead of Duke. And, of course, they hold the tiebreaker at the moment against Duke, but they play again. Duke and Virginia still play. Carolina and Virginia still play. So there's still plenty to get figured out in the ACC here over the last couple of weeks of the regular season. Adam, I mean, Carolina, I'm just trying to think of any, I mean, the starting backcourt for Syracuse both played 40 minutes, and they were 17 of 26 from the field. I mean,
no one wants Adrian Autry to play his bench more.
I just, if this was a standalone game, I think you shrug your shoulders a little bit and go, what are you going to do? It's the fact that it was coming this stretch where Carolina has not played as well. And I do think the one thing that has been consistent and you have more control over is the execution down the stretch. That does have to get better because 3 straight games Carolina has not looked good in the last 3 or 4 minutes, and it's cost them twice. They were able to hold on against Miami, but that execution down the stretch cost them the Clemson game. I mean, in addition to all the other things that happened, we know, but once you got to that point, and it hurt them in this game too. And so that's got to get fixed.
I'll be interested to see because as we're recording this, Carolina hasn't practiced yet, and you'll talk to Hubert Davis later today for tomorrow's pregame. After the Syracuse game, he was very focused on the fact that it was defensive issues that cost Carolina the game against Syracuse. With some time to look at it and watching the film on the way home and going through practice, I'll be interested to see if his opinion has changed any because I do think it was more of a, now, having seen it, I think it was more of a last 4 minutes thing than a, oh, gee whiz, they were really hot thing. They were really hot, and there's not a lot you can do about that. So I wonder if his opinion will have changed and some of those things will be addressed here this week in practice.
So Carolina has 6 games left. 4 of them are at home, which is good. Tar Heels are the only team in the ACC that has played 8 road games to this point. And they have not been easy road games, travel-wise or opponent-wise. Carolina's played some really good teams. And they still have really good teams left. I mean, their last 2 road games are Virginia and Duke. So Carolina, as we have said, has the most difficult ACC portion of the schedule of any of the contenders in the league. And so that has not changed.